As part of We the People, celebrating 250 years, here's This Day in History.
Now let's do it as we count down to America's 250th birthday this summer. We are sharing our We the People series, people, places, and things of the past that have shaped our country, what it is today. Talking about a Madison legend, Charlie.
Yeah, on this day, April 17th, way back in 1897, Thornton Wilder was born in Madison. He was a renowned author and playwright. His family lived here when his father, Amos Wilder, became the owner and editor of the Wisconsin State Journal. Wilder would find his own way with words and became a pivotal figure in the literary history of the 20th century. He is the only writer to win Pulitzer Prizes for both fiction and drama. Wilder received the Pulitzer for his novel, The Bridge of San Luis Rey, Our Town, and The Skin of Our Teeth. He also wrote the play Matchmaker, which is the basis for the musical Hello, Dolly. Wilder would also branch into the film industry, teaming up with Alfred Hitchcock as a screenwriter for the classic psycho thriller Shadow of a Doubt. That's This Day in History for April 17th.
And the accolades just keep climbing. His novel, Ides of March, great novel, later turned into a book, or movie rather, with George Clooney and Ryan Reynolds. Have you seen that?
I have not. He's got quite the trophy case, though.
No, I know. It was crazy. And then the tie-in with the Wisconsin State Journal and his father, too, is really cool.
Yeah.
There you go. Charlie, thank you.